recording?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I'll call this meeting to order. If we can have the roll call.
Commissioner Snyder?
Here.
Commissioner Cooney? Absent. Commissioner Young? Absent. Vice Chair Davis?
Here.
Chair Keller?
Here.
And Councilmember Snedden is absent. All right, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hartman, any changes to the agenda?
Chair Keller, there are no changes to the agenda.
Okay. Do we have any general public comment?
Chair Keller, we have no speakers for general public comment.
Okay. So do we have any comments on the consent calendar?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I have a question just on item 3, the caretaker's residence. There's a comment in there, as you know, that there were insufficient water capital funds to cover it and they need to go to reserve. Just briefly before, and I have no problem with the problem, just talk about what's our policy on the use of reserves and what's our demand looking like coming into the next year?
Chair Keller, Commissioner Davis, our reserves are looking good right now, although we're finding that a lot of projects are going over budget and we're having to go back to reserves. I think that's all going to come to play when we start talking about our next rate changes. But it is a cascading effect. We are seeing lower revenues also coming in. Despite a 10% increase in water rates, we're only seeing about 4 to 5% of that. So it's been discounted. A large part of that is coming from probably weather, just a wetter fall than we thought, which has thrown it off. So planning to end this year about $4.5 million below what we had projected. So all in all, it's a complex picture, and this is one, you're pointing out one of many projects that we're finding are going over what we had originally planned for. We certainly, if you're interested, we will be doing, our next 2-year budget is coming up, and that will start that conversation in the fall. Okay. And I think that's definitely could be part of it. We'll be halfway through our 4-year rate setting process. So we did, this will be year 3 we're entering, I guess. So there's one more after that. So, but we're doing that's roughly 10% increases to both water and wastewater, pretty significant. But good opportunity to check back in. We're also looking to bring on a rate consultant early. I think there were a lot of things that we wanted to discuss after the last one that are longer lead time items that we might want to implement as part of the next rate setting plan. But bringing them on and talking about this additional use of reserves.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments?
Did you have a comment? Okay. Thank you for that.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Wait, say, any public comment?
Thank you, sorry. Chair Keller, we have no speakers for public comment on this item.
So we have the motion and the second.
Okay, so that's Snyder Davis, first and second. All right, Commissioner Snyder?
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis?
Here. Yes.
And Chair Keller?
Yes.
All right, the motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. So on to the administrative items, and the first one will be the draft water loss control strategic plan.
Good morning, Water Commissioner, Chair Keller. I just wanted to provide an overview of kind of our entire administrative calendar for today's Water Commission meeting. This is really the culmination of our water supply planning team's work over the last year and a half. You'll recall back in September 2024, we brought a concept to you that we called Water Efficiency 2.0. And it was looking at, now that we've implemented AMI, coming out of the affordability study, how can we sort of redefine water conservation or water efficiency and expand it to be more holistic. And so as a result of that conversation back in September, we initiated 3 big planning efforts. And this today we're going to present 2 of those efforts to you. So one of those was the Water Loss Control Strategic Plan, which we'll be presenting next. Really looking at the opportunity to tighten up our own distribution system and see what we can save in terms of water conservation within the distribution system. And that was a really holistic effort, so we're going to have a pretty good discussion today on that. And then the next plan that we'll present is an update to our water conservation strategic plan. And so you'll recall that we have updated the water conservation strategic plan periodically, usually in conjunction with our urban water management plan. And that's where we do our demand planning, which you have seen in previous water commission meetings. And then this time around, we incorporated the utilization of our new AMI tools as a potential conservation measure, and then also looking at equity and if we could incorporate some programs that enhance equity within our offerings at the city. And then finally, our last presentation today is going to be our water supply update. And this is kind of like where the rubber hits the road, right? So we've got these longer term, big picture plans. And then every, twice a year, we come to the city, the Water Commission and council with our water supply update. And that's where we do the short term 3-year look ahead. We look at our supplies, we look at our demands, projected demands, and we make sure that everything adds up properly. As you know, it's been a pretty wet couple of years, so that's a good news story there. So I just wanted to kind of pull that all together and provide some context today before we get started, but the water supply and water conservation analysts are going to have a lot of good information for you today.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Dana Hoffenberg. I'm a water resources analyst, and I'm going to be talking to you today about our water loss control strategic plan. We have with us today our consultant, our water loss consultant, eSource, who we hired to help us make this plan. So Ms. Claudia Flores is going to take some of the slides later on. And we also have on Zoom Kate Gasner, who might pop in a little bit to give some more feedback as well. So just a general outline, I'll go over some project background and objectives. I'll remind everyone what water loss is, since we don't always talk about it all the time. We'll talk about the regulatory environment for water loss, and then Ms. Flores will talk about our findings and recommendations, key takeaways, and then of course we can have some further discussion. So the project's overall objective was to increase our confidence in our water loss data and our calculations, to make sure we hit our legislative targets, and to direct an overall cost-effective water loss control program. So I'll just caveat really quickly, we do have a lot of water loss control regulations. We have to meet strategic targets. We're not regulatory required to submit a plan or have a plan approved. So we don't need you to vote on officially approving the plan today, but this plan will direct our overall strategic efforts to make sure we do hit our legislative targets. There's a lot of different water loss control interventions out there today that a lot of different agencies are looking into. We wanted to make sure we had this plan in place to decide what made sense for the city, specifically given our situation and our system, and what was cost effective for the city. You know, we didn't want to just start doing all these different programs unless we knew it was going to be beneficial to us. And as Ms. Corey mentioned earlier, this is part of the city's larger Water Efficiency 2.0 initiative. And so we're taking our traditional focus of water conservation, which is customer side efficiency, and we're expanding it to the utility side efficiency as a whole. So a brief overview of what is water loss. So at the highest level, we take the water we supply, or the water we produce. We subtract the water that we use, so that's the water that we as a utility use or our customers use, and that delta is water loss. And then water loss is further broken down into apparent losses and real losses. Real losses are what you would typically expect when you think about water loss. These are physical leakages from the water distribution system. So these are things like a water main break or a leakage on a service line, things like that. Apparent losses are water that's lost, but not necessarily physically. It's usually due to data inaccuracies or data errors, data handling issues. The largest section of apparent losses is known as customer meter inaccuracy. So as meters age over time, especially our mechanical type of meters, they can under-register. And so that means, let's say a customer uses 10 units of water, but maybe the meter only picks up 9. That extra unit of water would be considered apparent loss. And in terms of the regulatory environment, we're primarily regulated on our real losses.
Sorry, quick question. At Cater, there's a meter. How is that calibrated, or how often is it calibrated?
Yes, so we calibrate our production meters at Cater quarterly. And then there's also another form of accuracy testing, volumetric flow testing, and we'll get pretty deep into that too in the presentation. So we'll talk now about our regulatory environment regarding water loss. So one piece of our regulation is we do have to conduct a water loss audit and submit that to the state every year. That's submitted to DWR. The water loss has to be validated by a certified third-party validator. The water loss audit, it's a software. It's essentially just a fancy Excel spreadsheet software. It's produced by the AWWA, and so everyone in the state has to use that same software to submit their water loss audits. And so this audit shows us, it calculates for us what our water losses are, and this is how the state assesses us for compliance. So these submittals to the state are how they judge us on if we're hitting our targets. The water loss audit is a desktop process. I do it from the safety of my desk. It calculates real losses and apparent losses, and it is a top-down deductive approach. So we have very important inputs that we put into the audit, the water produced and the water consumed, and that delta, so that difference is then how we deduce water loss. And then we make a lot of various assumptions that feed into our apparent loss calculation. We take out apparent loss from water loss to deduce real loss. So again, it's very much a top-down approach. It shows how important our data inputs are at the highest level. So it's our outputs for how confident we are in our water loss numbers are really dependent on our data inputs. The other main part of our water loss regulations is regulated by the State Water Resources Control Board. So the State Water Resources Control Board assigns a volumetric standard to each water supplier. And this standard is for real losses. We are assessed for compliance every 3 years. The first compliance assessment is going to be in 2028, and we have to have hit at or below our real water loss standard in 1 of 3 years. I will spoil it for you and tell you we did make it in our 2025 audit, but suppliers do have 2 more years in order to show compliance for that first standard compliance period. Going forward, we're then reassessed for compliance every 3 years, and we have to be in compliance with our standard on an average basis. So we can't just hit it in 1 year, we have to, on average, be in compliance for those 3 years. Here's just a general timeline to give you an idea of where we're at. Again, we're at the second chance for first compliance. You can see there's a lot of things on this timeline. There are a lot of other items that we have to submit to the state in terms of data, surveys, a break registry. We're not going to be getting into those today, but the largest parts of this legislation is submitting the annual audits and making sure that we are in compliance with our real loss standard.
Sorry, who conducts the audit?
I do.
It's internal.
It's internal, yeah. So I do it with all of our other staff. It's a very interdisciplinary exercise because it requires a lot of coordination with our treatment plant, our distribution crews, our billing staff. It kind of touches on every part of the system. And then we hire a certified third party to then go through and basically audit our audit. And eSource has been providing that for us in the past. So just zooming out a little bit to give you a broader regulatory landscape, water loss is a part of the overall water use objective that was created through the Making Conservation a California Way of Life regulatory framework. And so water loss is one piece of that overall water use objective. Interestingly, it is the only component of the regulatory framework that is enforced individually. So overall, we just have to hit our water use objective. They don't necessarily check if we're hitting our indoor standard, our outdoor standard, so forth, but there is a separate legislation specifically for water loss. So we do have to make sure we hit our real water loss standard specifically. And this is just to give you a background of what our water loss has looked like in the past and in comparison to our current standard. So that dashed line at the top is our real water loss standard. The city's standard is 28.8 gallons per connection per day, which is how we measure water loss. And you can see there's some variability here. And this is why we wanted to undertake this effort. In the past, we've even had negative water loss, and that's not just because I'm very good at my job. So we found some, data inaccuracies, which we corrected. And going forward, we had fairly stable water loss. You'll see throughout the reports and in most of the analysis that Ms. Flores is going to be talking about, we actually used the FY24 data, so the second to the right year, which was a relatively high water loss year for us. That was the most recent data we had at the time. I conducted the FY25 water loss audit in the middle of this effort, and you can see that came in quite low. So this indicates to us that, there's some areas of maybe data that we want to secure or tighten up a bit. And so that is why we really wanted to work with eSource to identify exactly what we could be doing, what areas should we be looking at first to make sure that we can have the most confidence we can have in our water loss auditing.
All right. What was your thought on what happened there in terms of 2025? Your best guess.
I'm not sure yet.
Okay. Because it's such a deviation.
It is, yeah. I think there's a lot of next steps that eSource has identified for us, and I think as we start executing them, it'll become more clear.
Okay.
And they've also prioritized things we should be looking into first. So I think once we start executing the plan that we've created, it'll start becoming more clear. We've already started doing some of the recommendations, and that helped me in the 2025 water loss audit. I actually did the audit via multiple methodologies, and using our older methodology, it was like even less good. So it's already increased our confidence a bit. But yeah, more to come, we'll see.
I had a similar question of like, were there much fewer water main breaks, or it doesn't sound like it was something obvious?
I don't think it was something obvious like that. You'll also see, I'm spoiling a lot of things, sorry, Claudia. We don't have a hugely leaky system, and our distribution teams do a really good job responding to leaks and breaks pretty quickly. So my suspicion is it's more data-based issue and less of like an actual physical situation happening.
Just following up on that too, and again, maybe I didn't understand it, but the meter at Cater was upstream and now it's going to be downstream per se from the plant?
Yeah, so there's a lot.
Did that happen during that time?
So I did the audit for using both. I did both methodologies. So of the influent meter, which is the more upstream meter, and then also the effluent meter, which is the more downstream meter. This shows the result using that effluent meter, which is the new methodology. I also ran the numbers using the influent meter, and the loss was even lower. So that's why, which seemed not necessarily reasonable. So that's why we are pretty confident in some of the actions we're already starting to take. We're already seeing our numbers be more reasonable. That makes sense? Okay. And with that, I will pass over to Ms. Flores.
Perfect. Thanks, Ms. Hoffenberg. I'll be going over the findings and recommendations, excuse me, of the main analyses that we did for this project. Next slide, please. Okay, so we started off with doing a historic water audit review. This is where we reviewed water audits from 2016 to 2024, and this was to ensure that the city's reporting practices aligned with the industry best practices. This was really important because the water audit was a key data source that we used for this project, so we wanted to make sure we understood any uncertainty in the data. Next slide, please. So our main finding for this analysis was the water audit boundary could be redrawn for the city. So more specifically, the city has historically used the Cater influent meter to report production from Cater water treatment plant, but the main point of the audit, or the goal of the audit, is to calculate leakage happening in the distribution system. So we recommended that the city choose a meter that was closer to distribution, or a meter that read all the water that went straight to distribution to avoid this. Because if we were to use the intake meter or the influent meter, we might be including some leakage that may be occurring at the plant in our calculations. Excuse me. Next slide, please. Okay, another thing we did was site visits to the production meters. So we went to a couple of production meter sites that are used for the water audit to see if we could do flow accuracy testing on them. This was important because, like Ms. Hoffenberg said, water supplied is the largest input in the water audit, and how we calculate leakage is we take consumption and apparent losses and deduct that from supply. The image here that you see, everything that's highlighted are the sites that we visited, and we created this image during the project to ensure that everybody was in agreement on what meters read water into the distribution system and what meters read water out of the distribution system. As you know, the city has a diverse water supply portfolio and also a complex water distribution system. Next slide, please. So our main finding for this analysis was that the highest producing meter could be tested for flow accuracy, and this is at the Cater water treatment plant. And then also there are some production sites, they would need to be modified in order for us to perform a flow accuracy test. And again, ultimately our recommendation was to conduct flow accuracy tests on the production meters to reduce any uncertainty in the audit. Next slide. Okay, next we have our real loss component analysis. So this helped us develop leakage management interventions for the city. The purpose of the real loss component analysis is what we do is we take the real losses that we calculate in the water audit and we break it out into different leakage types. So we're probably almost familiar with reported leakage. That's leakage that has surface and is reported by the city staff or the public. And then we also have background leakage, which are the weeps and seeps. They typically happen at the joints and fittings of pipes. So those are not detectable using acoustic leak detection technology because they tend to be very small, but we can reduce them with pressure management. And then for unreported leakage, that's leakage that has not surfaced, but it is detectable using acoustic leak detection technology. Next slide, please. So doing the real loss component analysis, we estimated that the majority of leakage happening for the city is likely background leakage, but there are non-surfacing or unreported leaks to be found, and in the plot that's shown as hidden loss. We also took a look at the city's response time to main and service breaks or leaks, and we found that the city was pretty quick in getting to those. For mains, it's about 2 hours, or the medium was about 2 hours, and then for service leaks, which are usually smaller and not an emergency, it was 21 hours. Next slide, please. Okay, so our recommendations after doing this analysis was for the city to conduct a full system survey. So that would be to remove any existing leakage and then to maintain low levels of leakage or just for maintenance and management, we recommended that the city survey the system about 28% of the distribution system annually. So that equates to like 92 miles per year. So this frequency was calculated as part of the real loss component analysis and was identified as the city's economic intervention frequency. So that's where we try to balance the cost of leak detection surveying and the cost of water. We try to find that sweet spot where we're not spending a lot of money, but it's also not costing us a lot of money. And then because the city, most of its leakage was background leakage, we recommended to do a pressure management study to help reduce leakage. And then also the city to maintain their existing, quick response time to leaks. The city, again, is pretty quick, so no major notes there. Next slide,
Just
please.
a quick question.
Yes.
Just on that, go back to the previous slide. Conducted the manual acoustic leak detection survey, and that's on the entire system.
The water distribution system. Yes.
Why does that seem like a really big job to me?
It is quite a big job. So basically, the leak detection technicians will go out and listen to like valves, hydrants, meter boxes, and they listen for leak noises, and they walk the system. Depending on how experienced the leak detection person is, they can do like 4 miles a day on average. So it takes a bit of time.
This activity also happens at night when it's quieter.
Yeah.
So you really can pick up on that, and they have really good microphones that they're basically moving along the system as they go. I was going to add in here on the pressure management study. So this has come up frequently, even during our water distribution infrastructure plan. Like the city has, its average pressure is really high. I believe it was ranked 119 PSI or something was our average. A typical customer probably needs between 40 and 60 PSI to operate most of their home appliances. But we already have 16 pressure zones, so our system is already pretty fractured, and each one of those pressure zones takes additional resources to manage. But I think one of the things that we're going to be studying, and this is really helpful here to kind of quantify the value of it, because obviously that higher pressure leads to more main breaks, but when those breaks do occur, they're more devastating. So there's a lot of advantages. And then there's, of course, the water loss from leaks and seeps and all that that comes along with that higher pressure. But really just re-envisioning, our system was piecemeal the way it was kind of built, but really trying to reimagine as we go through and replace these mains, maybe not adding additional pressure zones, but thinking about how we might restructure those pressure zones so that we might be able to bring our average pressure down below 100, which doesn't sound like a big change, but could mean significant reductions in water loss and devastation from water main breaks and such. So there's a lot there, but saying that is one thing, doing that is a whole other thing. So we are right now working to try and program the cost to do this kind of study, because it would probably be pretty expensive. But so we're trying to get that in the next 2 years to at least start a pressure management study, which will kind of look holistically at the distribution system and how we might reimagine it, the different pressure zones, if we were trying to kind of keep a band of somewhere between 40 and 80 or 40 and 100 PSI, how many zones would that create? Yeah.
I had a clarifying question on that on slide 20, where there was the chart that showed the different types of loss. So the hidden loss, that is the one that the pressure management addresses. Is that right?
Pressure management can address all of them, but the category that can only be fixed with pressure management is actually background loss. Because background loss is the weeps and seeps. So that's leaks that are so small we can't detect them or really fix them. So you really just reduce it by reducing background pressure. And to Mr. Hagmark's point, this does make a good case for having a pressure management study and implementing pressure management, because this is far and away our largest portion of water loss, is just the system leaking just because it's pressurized.
And AWWA, all these folks recognize, even if you put in a brand new main, you're talking about rubber gaskets and all this kind of stuff, there is an acceptable amount of loss. And I don't remember what it is per linear foot of pipe, but it adds up when you have, 300 miles of pipe. So yeah, I think the only way we're going to get to this, but I don't want to sugarcoat this. It would be an extensive undertaking to try and reshape our pressure zones that we have now.
And I saw something in the summary that talked about district metered area analysis. So is that pressure zones? Is that the same thing, or is that something different?
It's related to pressure zones. There's so many analyses that we did in the report, we couldn't fit them all into the presentation. That was the slide that we cut, sorry. But yeah, so what district metered areas are is you basically look at a smaller subset of your system and do analysis of the water coming in versus the water being used. And you just do a mass balance within that specific portion of the system. And that is generally a pressure zone that you do it in. And so eSource did identify 3 pressure zones that are already kind of the way the system is set up. We could probably do a DMA analysis on them if we do a little bit of extra work and extra testing. And that's we do a mass balance, and then we also do like a nighttime analysis of flows.
Just, Joshua, you brought up this idea of acceptable water loss area. If I'm looking at that, am I reading this right, that, a little over 800 acre feet, right, let's just say 10,000 acre feet, so we're losing essentially 8% plus or minus. Is there, when we're talking about acceptable, what would be the target? Where would we like to be?
Yeah, so our real water loss standard is 28.8 gallons per connection per day in a volume that's about 850 acre feet per year. So the state expects us, all of our real losses taken together, so background reported and like hidden, to all be 850 acre feet per year or less. There is a metric called the infrastructure leakage index, and that's a big math problem that takes into a lot of system characteristics and basically gives you a ratio of like how you're doing in terms of what a model would expect your system to leak versus what we're actually leaking. And the city's ILI is pretty close to 1. So that means we're doing a pretty good job. Our system isn't is only a little bit more leaky than what a modeled perfect system would have based on our leakage. Because we have such high system pressure, there is more of an allowance for what it would expect our leakiness to be than maybe a system with lower pressure.
Interesting, okay.
There's been conversations of getting down to 5% loss. I have not met anybody from an agency who has 5% loss yet, so I don't know who is actually in that category, what kind of system is experiencing that, but it is one of those things that I think the team would agree. It's not something you just check the box on. Like, it is just diligently working. Like, we're already starting to talk about meter replacement, even though, our oldest meters now are 2014-ish. But the strategy now isn't maybe based on age, it's based on how much water went through that meter. And so the meters that have seen the most usage might be our first target for replacement, So anyway, it's going after all of those all at the same time and having kind of a planned effort. But it is...
We'll get to the meter testing next.
Okay, so next we have customer meter testing. So all meter populations have some sort of level of inaccuracy. Meters can become inaccurate at any point. Like Ms. Hoffberg had mentioned, the water audit does allow us to account for this inaccuracy under the apparent losses. And compared to theft and compared to theft and data handling errors, customer metering inaccuracy is typically the largest component of apparent losses. Currently, the city doesn't have any data we can use to update this value in the water audit. So what we recommended for the city, next slide, please, is to develop a customer meter testing program. So in order for the city to do this, we created a testing sample of 250 small customer meters. And when I say small, I mean 2 inches and below. That would be random and representative of the current meter population. And then for larger meters, so anything that's 3 inches and above, since there's only about 100 of them and they tend to see higher volume in a shorter amount of period of time compared to the small meters, we created a testing schedule for them using a cost minimization model.
I do want to stop here and just talk about, when we talk about metering inaccuracies, this is typically under-registering water. The type of meters that we have are positive displacement meters. So we don't see situations where they are over metering. So our customers, it's to our customers' benefit, if you want to say it to that end. But certainly in our effort to stay accurate, we get people often that say, oh, I think my meter is over registering, it's picking up flows, and it's typically not how those meters work. There are ultrasonic meters that are out there that do have the ability to drift more, I think, in favor of against the homeowner, but those are not the type of meters that we currently have in our system. And so if you get questions from the community about that, and meters also don't typically heal themselves either after. Okay.
So ultimately, our recommendation for the customer meter inaccuracy input would help us develop a replacement program for the small meters. So next slide. So currently, there's not an established industry standard on when to replace your small customer meters. In the past, the city has undergone a replacement project to advance its technologies in its meters. So that's when all the meters in the system were switched over to advanced metering infrastructure compatible meters, or also known as AMI meters. Now that the city has done that, the city is looking to manage that stock of meters, and instead of doing a whole meter replacement project again, the city wants to create a program that's data driven. So this means that the city would target specific meters that are at risk at failure or of inaccuracy. So in order to do this, the city would need a variety of testing sample groups to test. What we did was we looked at the city's current meter population, and we specifically looked at age and throughput, because those are some of the variables that the city is interested in looking at and how those affect meter performance. And for age, we saw that there wasn't much variability in age. Like, most meters are around 10 years old, and that aligns with the past replacement project. And then for throughput, we also didn't see much variation, which wasn't a huge shocker because most of the customers are residential. Next slide, please. So what our recommendations for this was for the city to create a data-driven replacement program. Since we don't have these testing groups right now to test, what we recommend for the city to do is to start meter replacement now to create some variability, specifically in age, and then also for the city to, and that would also be to distribute the workload, right? Because replacing meters during a long period of time versus replacing meter just during one project, there's a difference. And then as a stopgap, the city could use the testing sample that they use to update the customer metering inaccuracy input to see if any trends or patterns arise. So for example, if they were to test a sample of small meters and they saw that the meters at the 15-year age mark were failing or degrading, then they could further look into that subset of meters to see if it is really age that's affecting meter performance, or if it's something else like water quality or pressure. So that was our recommendation there. And then all these detailed analyses could be found in the supplemental reports. And then all these supplemental reports fed into the water loss control strategic plan. So it's like a synthesis of all the supplemental reports. And then if there are no more questions, I'll pass it over to Ms. Gassner, who's calling in remotely, and she'll talk about our prioritized recommendations and key takeaways.
Hi, everyone. I can't necessarily see you at the moment, but I just wanted to add some thoughts, there you are, about some of our bigger takeaways. So what you'll find with the water loss work is that we go very deep into different data sets and develop all sorts of recommendations around how to improve those operational practices or the data itself to better understand non-revenue water and leakage throughout the system. But even though we have all these exciting little nitpicky recommendations across each of those volumes, I wanted to give a little perspective at the 10,000-foot view around what the city's priorities are, when we put that all in the scale of big project work, big focuses in the strategic plan. And in that, at that level, we're not worried about the city's leakage performance. And I think Dana did Ms. Hoffenberg did an outstanding job of describing that current performance is really just above that technical minimum we would expect for the operations of the system. We're also not worried about the state scrutiny at this point. Ms. Hoffenberg also mentioned, but I think it's worth highlighting, that you've already achieved compliance for this first phase of real loss performance standards. So we've got no state scrutiny pressure, and we've got data that currently suggests a highly functional and efficient leakage picture. Where we are concerned is in the repeatability and consistency of that picture. So we're lucky in that we don't have high costly leakage or regulatory risk, but we would like you to keep up the momentum on refining those data sources so that the water audit is a useful and insightful process. Right now, especially when we look at some of those production meter maintenance questions, we have a little concern about the reliability of those big assets that are driving a lot of the numbers. So to invest a little bit more in the accuracy and monitoring of those assets would be wise and strategic. And as Claudia just said, you've got an interesting customer meter cohort, but keeping an eye on them and how that apparent loss volume is faring will also be key. I think it's good news overall that we are looking at a data maintenance endeavor for water loss work going forward. And with that monitoring project, there may be pivots ahead if that water loss picture looks worse. But our biggest concern right now is making sure that you're looking at a picture that's accurate with small and operationally valuable investments in some of those data sources.
Thank you, Ms. Gassner. All right, with that, I'll go on to next steps. So our overall next steps are to plan for implementation by incorporating some of these recommendations into future budget cycles. And then, of course, implement key recommendations. And overall, this is an adaptive process and an iterative process. So as we start doing these recommendations, they'll give us more information, more data. We can rerun some analyses, and then that will inform our future intervention strategies. So for right now, it looks like, as Ms. Gassner was saying, this is mostly a data maintenance and improvement exercise. And then as we get more and more data, we'll basically look at what story that data is telling us, and then we can go back and readapt the plan.
Okay.
And with that, we're happy to take any questions.
Any more questions? Well, thank you very much for a very insightful presentation. So do we have any public comment?
Chair Keller, we have no public comment on this item.
Okay, thanks again. Thank you. So next is the draft water conservation strategic plan.
Chair Keller and members of the Water Commission, my name is Madeline Wood. I'm the Water Conservation Analyst, and I'll be talking you through our Water Conservation Strategic Plan today. As an outline, I'll be discussing the background and purpose of the plan. We also have Michelle Madaus of Madaus Water Management, who you remember from our last meeting, who will talk you through the analysis methodology. We'll discuss the selected program and our next steps. So the Water Conservation Strategic Plan is a technical analysis that enables the city to project long-range water demands, identify attainable conservation goals, and develop strategies and prioritize those conservation measures. This modeling was first done by the city in 2010 to support the long-term water supply plan. It was updated in 2014 in response to severe drought, and then our last iteration of it was in 2020 to support the urban water management plan and the first conservation strategic plan. As you may recall, this is part of our Water Efficiency 2.0, as Ms. Corey had mentioned, which entails the Water Loss Control Strategic Plan and an update to our Water Conservation Strategic Plan. So current and new conservation measures are evaluated for cost effectiveness based on what we call the avoided cost of additional water supplies. So is it more cost effective for the city to implement a conservation measure to reduce demand or to develop supplies to meet that additional demand? The purpose of the plan is to provide an assessment of the existing water conservation programs and identify those cost-effective water conservation opportunities for our community. We'll utilize new tools like the automated metering infrastructure system and support the development of updating the water demand forecasts for the 2025 Urban Water Management Plan and other long-term water supply planning efforts. And you saw a lot of those demand projections with Ms. Showers in previous meetings, including in April. We also incorporated the recommendations put forth in the water affordability study that was conducted by the Alliance for Water Efficiency in 2024 and incorporated equity considerations into the screening and prioritization of conservation measures. And finally, to assess and lay a foundation for continued compliance with the state's regulatory framework, which Ms. Hoffenberg had also discussed. So as a refresher, we worked with the Alliance for Water Efficiency on a water affordability report to see how much of a financial burden our water and wastewater bills were on households. The study found that when viewed by census tract level, certain tracts were more burdened by water affordability. The affordability report also set recommendations which were presented to the Water Commission for prioritization in March of 2024. And priorities were determined based on several factors, including ease of implementation, items that will take programmatic development, and items that may require policy action or should be addressed as future rate studies. And recommendation number 6 was to explore strategies to expand and improve the accessibility of water conservation programs, and we integrated that into this iteration of the conservation plan. So before we dive into the analysis and the demand projections, I want to briefly cover historical demands and current conservation programs. I like to look at where we've been before we look at where we're going. And also, this is my favorite graph. So if you haven't seen this before, this is population, production, and rainfall from 1898 to 2025. On the bottom, we have the blue bars, which is rainfall. As you can see, it's highly variable. The yellow shading indicates periods of drought. The purple line is population, which, as you can see, increases quite steadily for decades and then tends to level out in the 80s. And then the green line is water production, which does trend along with population for several decades. It starts to flatten out in the 80s, and then we have 2 considerable drops from our historic droughts in the late 80s to early 90s, and then our most recent one that started in 2014. So what we can see here with this delta between the purple and the green is that the city's commitment to water conservation is clearly illustrated by reductions in water use over the past 30 to 40 years. And currently, community water use is at the same level it was in the late 1950s, despite population increasing significantly since that time. This is the water use profile of annual water use from 2021 to 2024. Most of the city's water use is residential, with single family and multifamily accounting for 72% of that total use. Commercial and institutional is about 2%, or sorry, 22%. And dedicated irrigation meters, those are our separate irrigation meters, are 6% of total community water use. You'll see that single family with ADU accounts are tracked separately in this measure, or in this iteration of the plan. And that's because the water use does vary if the property has an ADU versus just a single family account. And ADU stands for accessory dwelling unit. And so we wanted to track it separately because vacant lots are quite scarce in the city. We do expect that this will be a more common occurrence. And if we're able to track it separately, we can also track savings separately.
Irrigation potable is separate from irrigation from reclaimed, recycled water?
That's correct. This is just the potable demands
Yeah,
that we're
okay.
seeing here. Good question.
I also had a question on the commercial. I know that with the framework reporting, you're going to get more like granular on the types of commercial use, and so will that be able to input into this eventually?
Yes, that's a good point. So we have our categories broken down. So what you see right there is commercial is a significant chunk, and then industrial is sort of a smaller portion. But we do have, through the state framework, a requirement to categorize into Energy Star Portfolio Manager. It's not a perfect fit because it's designed for energy, so it's not always correlated with water use, but we do have those categories, and we have been implementing that and keeping that updated. And there's also a lot of positive developments in our WaterSmart portal to be able to track it in the WaterSmart portal, so we're testing that out. Okay, so I like to think of our water conservation program as having 3 legs to the stool. We have our operational side, which is our AMI meters, tiered rates, water loss control, as Ms. Hoffenberg presented, and recycled water that replaces the need for potable water. Then we have our external programs, so our rebates, our public outreach programs, gardener education, and school programs. And then the regulatory leg of the stool is a lot of the work happening quietly in the background that also reduces demand, such as the plumbing code, landscape code, state regulations, and reporting. So the city's proud to be a leader in water conservation and was awarded platinum status by the Alliance for Water Efficiency for the Water Conservation Program Operation and Management Standard, also called the G480 standard, which is a framework for water providers developed by the American Water Works Association. Our conservation program emphasizes education, incentives, and outreach. And here are just some participation stats from the last 5 years that touch on school programs, digital outreach, rebates, and leak alerts.
I had a quick
Yes.
question. Well, one, it's just impressive. I love this graphic because it's just amazing, all of the engagement and work you guys have done. So kudos on that. I was also curious, it's not relevant for all of them, but for some of them, like the breakdown between residential and commercial, like are commercial water users engaging in any of this, or is it pretty much all residential? Or like thinking about the leak alerts too, like it would be interesting to see that breakdown.
That's a good point. That is something we could certainly factor in. The majority of this will be residential. It is also the majority of our use. The leak alerts, certainly a chunk of those are commercial or multifamily. And that's something that is also a positive development with WaterSmart, is being able to fine tune leak alerts based on those different property types, because a leak alert for a hotel should be structured very differently than one for a retail store, for example. So we're excited about those developments and working through that.
Great.
And now I will turn it over to Michelle Madaus to talk you through the analysis methodology. She's joining virtually. I don't know if I said that already.
Well, thank you, and good morning, Chair Keller and Commissioner Davis. It's so great to be back and presenting to all of you. So yeah, the DSS model is a short name for the Least Cost Planning Decision Support System. That's a mouthful, so hence the shorter version, DSS model. It's a proprietary model developed by Madaus Water Management in 1999. The city has been utilizing the tool since 2010, and we're excited to continue to work with you and continue to keep it current. As Ms. Woods was talking about, we had some purpose and goals, and so now, we were on the team to try and use the technical tools to achieve those goals. We had 5 things that we worked on together: projecting future water demand, evaluating the current measures and identifying new ones, and then quantifying those, both for costs and water savings. Then we combine the measures into programs, because really what happens is you don't run things individually, but you run them, like Madeline was showing you on the previous slide, as a set of things. So we tried to look at them as a group of measures, and those are called programs. And then we looked at the compliance with the state regulations and what that meant quantitatively and what we wanted to do for the measures to do an update. Our previous plan didn't really directly include the state regulation because it was being developed, but now it is passed and adopted, so it was directly incorporated. And then again, we aligned with the Alliance for Water Efficiency Affordability Study mentioned earlier by Madeline. Next slide, please. So one of the very first things we did was we sat down and we reviewed what is possible. So the good news is there's a lot of different things you can do in water conservation. There's over 100 different items that you could decide to do. So we sat down and worked with city staff to look at things that are currently working and working well, and other things that we could consider and or were required by the regulation. So as a team, we came down with a shorter list of 18 measures that were analyzed in the model. Just because it's analyzed in the model doesn't mean we're actually going to do it. It means we're going to quantify it, take a look at the numbers, and decide if it's a good investment or not for the city. To the right, you see a graphic, and that is a list of all of the data that we collect. It is a very robust model. It does take a lot of information. So the model feeds off of information that is city specific. So it really truly is water consumption and customer categories and jobs and population directly from all of your documents. We worked very closely with the Urban Water Management Plan team. We also worked with the eSource team. So we were all in sync, and we were using some of the same assumptions they were for water loss as well. So that also helps with the consistency between the plans and the robustness of the data that we're using. So next slide, please. So the DSS model is what they call an end-use model. So an end-use model means it goes all the way to the end of the pipe being a fixture or an appliance. So it goes all the way down to a toilet, a washer, things like that. That's important because those are the devices we're changing, right? So if we're going to be able to be accurate as your water system changes, we have to be able to track it at the device level. That's what an end use means. So we take the entire water use from your system, we look at it from an end use level. We change out every single year. We allow those fixtures and the state, federal, and local codes to change those fixtures, and then we add everything up. So it becomes a top perspective of what your total water demand is for that year, and then we do it again and again and again. So it's very dynamic. Things change every single year. The goal is that we have an accurate picture of how your system is changing, not only from the fixture level, but we add population and other dynamics that are changing. The ultimate goal is to add in conservation measures. So we add efficiency measures for each of those end uses. We definitely, it's in a slightly different color, try to do benefit cost analysis. That's where the quantification and the cost and the water savings come in. And ultimately, we come out with a water demand that includes conservation. That information you were seeing a couple times from Jasmine. There was a few presentations on that. We did have multiple different scenarios on that as well, so that all the documents and everything are in sync, but it was very much coming out of the model, and all those scenarios are tied into all of this data that we've been collecting. Next slide, please. So that was a lot of words. So for those of you that prefer a visual, here's a visual. So similar to what Ms. Woods was talking about, we have these distant customer categories. The model is very custom built. So for your service area, it has single family, multifamily, commercial, industrial irrigation, single family ADU. You saw the percentages presented just a moment ago, but those are all individually tracked, categorized, and changed based on individual growth rates. We load in that information, and then we layer on top long-term population and employment growth. We can add short-term drought recoveries or long-term climate change, and we definitely can impact that. And that was some of those scenarios I was talking about and you've seen previously. Then we add in passive conservation, also known as plumbing codes, so that all gets added in. Then you also get new plan conservation. Those are some of the water conservation 2.0 measures we've been talking about, and AMI, all that gets added in. And then to the right, we come out with a demand forecast that is broken out into indoor and outdoor, and that is also helpful for compliance with the regulations, and that is the end goal. So you feed all the data in, and then all the way to the right, you have water demands. Again, if you want more detail on that, please feel free to go watch the previous two presentations that Jasmine gave on that as well. And next slide, please. All right, so this is a quantification. I know it's a little small, but this is the 18 measures. The way that we look at them is a couple different ways. So again, quantification is important. So we look at the cost of the measure because it does cost to do these things. And then we look at how much water it saves. When we compare those, it becomes a cost savings per unit volume. Here is shown in acre feet. And we kind of like organize them. So you can kind of put a context to like, okay, how much does this cost, but how much is it really saving me? That helps us, select the measures that, are getting us a lot of water savings for the least amount of cost. They are color coded. Those again try and show us, that we have a balanced program. We definitely want different things for our different customers in the community, community and education, residential, commercial, irrigation, and leak assistance. Those are all important elements. So when we finish and we have a balanced program and recommended program, we have elements from all of those individual categories. And again, we had a presentation back in November talking about selecting these measures. And so if you're curious how we got to this list of 18 and discussing that, you're welcome to review that as well. Next slide, please.
We have a question.
Oh, question, go for it.
Well, I'm very curious about this chart. I like it. There's a lot in here. And one of the things, like when I was reviewing the draft plan, like some of these really surprised me, like school education being relatively cost effective, or like the residential washer rebate being so expensive. Like these are not necessarily organized in the way that I would have expected. And so I was curious to see like what are some of the drivers of those, especially on the rebates. Like, is this because the program management costs are higher, or could you talk about a little bit like what drives the costs the most?
Yeah, so good question. Each measure is custom built. So it can have a different start date, it can have a different end date. You did bring up one key element is how expensive the program is to run. Some of the programs are like easier to run, and some of them are time intensive. Obviously, school education, you need to send someone out to physically, work with the students, where some of the other ones, it's much simpler. People will do a rebate form and we're doing a check, but you still have to process that. So we sat with staff, and each individual measure is custom built to exactly what we are doing. And there's different levels of costs and different levels of savings as well, right? So that's why it's important to have a model like this that takes all that information into account, because it'd be really hard, if you were trying to do that as a human, to hold that all in your head and be like, okay, does that make sense? And so all of those individual parameters are consistent throughout. So every single measure has similar things we need to fill in. And then in the end of the day, that's how it comes out. But yes, the more labor intensive or the more expensive the thing we have to purchase, obviously that's a higher cost. But then also some of those have higher savings too. So it's kind of a balance. So yeah, it is interesting. And it can vary by service area as well. I run these up and down the state and across the country, and it's interesting because this table changes based on how they're custom built.
Just a follow-up question. So some of these is fairly straightforward to figure out how much is the water savings. For others, for example, the school education or mulch delivery rebate, how is that estimated? Because those are much softer numbers, and I imagine with a lot more uncertainty.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, I love the ones that are like super quantified and easier, like a toilet.
Yeah.
I'm replaced with toilet A with toilet B. Great, subtract A from B, and that's the water savings. Excellent. You're right. There are some others that are more behavior based. You know, we know, okay, well, how much time does it take our staff? And we have a loaded staff cost of how much it times, but then it takes for that person to give that program or presentation. But then on the other side, how much water are we saving? We're going out, we're, you know, providing information, but is anyone actually doing actions from that? These programs have been around for a while and established for a while. There are some water savings, but we're pretty conservative on that. You know, assuming that it's important, we definitely want to have it, but we're not going to give it a huge savings, because here's the catch. If I go and educate a student, they go home and tell that information to their parent, and their parent turns around and wants to do a washer rebate. Where am I counting that? Right? Is that on the school education side, or is that on the washer side? So it becomes a driver for some of your other programs. So we have to be a little bit careful with things, but there is behavior savings, like turning off faucets or longer, shorter showers, or not letting that leak go forever. You know, so there's a balance of behavioral changes and fixture changes. And we do have to take that into consideration at all times. So yeah, some of those programs that are education based are the harder ones, but there's been a lot of studies done on those, and so we rely on those, and we've been working on your program since 2010, so we use that kind of information over time, you know.
Okay,
There's
thank you.
definitely savings. It's
Thank
just
you.
smaller
So I
and
can
harder. Yeah.
provide a little background on a few of these too. So the mulch delivery rebate, as you can imagine, it's hard to just quantify how much of a like potable demand reduction adding a thick layer of mulch could be to our customers. But one of the other benefits of offering this program is for those that don't qualify for the lawn replacement program, we have the mulch delivery program. So we also look at it as a comprehensive program of being able to offer things to customers who don't have an irrigated lawn, that don't qualify, because they're still looking to do landscape projects. And we say, well, we can help you with the drip conversion and we can help you with the mulch. We just cannot pay $1 per square foot for lawn that you're not currently irrigating. So it's sort of part of our suite of measures. Also, the reason why the school education looks so much more cost effective to the sort of other comparable one of general public education is the school education program has a few components in it. Some of it is classroom education, and some of it's physical water and energy saving kits with dye tabs, aerators, and shower heads. And we get reports at the end of the year of how many were installed, how many leaks they found, et cetera. So we actually have like cold hard numbers to associate with that, versus general public education has a lot of assumptions. So that's what improves the school education, is that there's actual physical water gallons that we can track that were saved with that program. But as as Michelle has said, the general public education, if you don't have it at all, then people don't know about any of these programs. So it's never going to look super cost effective, but you have to tell people about the programs. That's what drives them into the other measures that you see.
Could you also speak briefly to, I was surprised that the washer rebate and the toilet retrofit programs were so expensive.
So the toilet program that we were modeling is direct install, which, as we know, can be quite expensive because there is the labor cost compared to what we used to do before the plumbing code changed was just a rebate essentially, and we didn't cover any of the labor costs. So that's why that one is high. But we are hoping that that's something we could cost share with the gas utility, who's been doing that in other areas of Southern California. So that would reduce some of that labor cost. The washer rebate, I'm trying to remember why that is looking high. I know it's not going to continue for much longer because of the code changes. There is an administrative price to that to administer those rebates, and it's just a higher rebate amount too, because washing machines are so expensive. Basically, the difference between a high efficiency washer and a standard, we have to make it a true incentive for people to make that decision. So as the cost of washers increases, we try to stay competitive so people realize that there's a benefit there.
Thank you.
All right, Michelle, I'm going to slide 17. Does that work for you?
Yes, it
Okay.
does. Okay, So let's spend just a minute talking a little bit about historical demand versus projected demand. We have both on this graph. So it's a zoomed in version of what you saw from Madeline a little while ago. This is just the last, couple decades. On the left-hand side in the black with the solid dots is your historical water demand. You can see the big drop. That was your 2014 to 2016 drought. And then you see another drop, and that was been kind of the more recent drought. Moving ahead to the right, we see that there is, future demand. There's also a gap in there, and that's because that's an average. We don't take any single year. We kind of are taking an average of multiple years, so that's why it's like slightly higher. That is standardized when we do demand forecasting, is that you want to kind of take an average of years and not a single year. The overall plumbing code is listed on here. Again, a plumbing code is current state and local and federal codes, and that is retrofit. So all the time we're changing out our fixtures, our toilets, urinals, shower heads, faucets, washers. Those are all codes and constantly getting more efficient over time, because when you go to purchase them, and your old one wears out, you're going to buy a new one, and it's typically more efficient than the one you had before. Programs B and C to the right are kind of right on top of each other. That's kind of intentional, because what we're trying to do is maximize and get you the most water savings for the least amount of money. So we've taken the most attractive measures we can and put them in your recommended program or program B. And then we, are kind of using those to get the most savings. But then program C is still there, doesn't have much more savings, but has a higher cost. So, but they end up pretty similar on top of each other in terms of a water demand perspective, and that's intentional. So again, program A is your least amount of measures, the least amount of savings, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. And then we have the recommended program or program B, and then we have program C. So the demand and plumbing code measures basically feed off of the baseline demand. Again, this demand was utilized in your 2025 urban water management plan to pull everything together, right? So we've got your conservation fixtures in there, we've got your population growth in there, we've got your ADU assumptions in there. That all feeds together and then comes out with these demand forecasts and your recommended program, again, that's been updated for your state compliance and all these new elements that we've been incorporating. So are there any questions on this?
It doesn't look like it. Thank you, Ms. Medaus.
Back to you.
Alrighty. So the city has elected to implement Program B, which is the 16 of the measures modeled in the planning effort, and that's in orange there, but that also includes Program A, those two combined. And the font is quite small, so I'm going to read them out to you because it looks like on the printout it's quite small too. So that is plumber-initiated high-efficiency toilet rebate, leak repair rebate, AMI customer portal and leak alerts, leak detection device rebate, water efficient landscape standards, smart sprinkler timer rebate, green gardener program, commercial, institutional, and industrial, also called CII, water survey, customized CII incentive, sustainable lawn replacement rebate, mulch delivery rebate, sprinkler to drip irrigation rebate, spray sprinklers to low precipitation sprinkler rebate, residential washer rebate, school education, and public education programs. So the program provides a broad range of customer benefits in a more equitable manner. It incorporates recommendations from the 2024 affordability report and aligns with state regulatory framework requirements. In conjunction with the plumbing code measures, Program B saves 9% of projected demand in the year 2050. And from the utility standpoint, the average cost of water saved from Program B is $719 per acre foot, which is less than the avoided cost of water at $1,078 per acre foot.
How is the avoided cost of water estimated?
That is a wonderful question, and I'm very glad that we have our two supply analysts here, and one of them is welcome to tackle that. Because that we've chewed on a lot over the last year and looked at a few different ways to discuss that.
Hi, Dana Hoffenberg again, Water Resources Analyst. Yeah, so this looks at our variable unit cost of our water. So this doesn't take into consideration our fixed costs. And basically, generally speaking, what we do is we look at all of our different supply sources and we look at our variable costs. So these are the costs that fluctuate with how much we use. So it's electricity, chemical, waste management, that kind of thing. And we come up with a dollar per acre foot per supply. And then we choose a supply mix and we do a weighted average, essentially. That's a very broad perspective of how we do it.
So this slide shows baseline water demands with plumbing code and program B, and savings in 5-year increments from 2030 to 2050, and they're in acre feet per year. The top row shows the baseline demands over time. The middle row is demands with plumbing code and program B, and the bottom row shows the savings. So these savings are cumulative with a reduction in potable demand of 984 acre feet in the year 2050. In this iteration of the plan, we also included a section on staffing and budget analysis for the conservation, because the conservation landscape has changed considerably since the last plan due to drought conditions ending and new state regulations. So the table shows a summary of the projected operating costs for the program. And in terms of staffing, the city is currently running a conservation program with 4.5 full-time equivalent staff, 1 full-time water conservation analyst, who's me, and several other positions wherein a portion of their role includes support for water conservation activities. It's recommended that the city increase the conservation team by at least 1.5 full-time equivalent staff by the year 2032 for a total of 6 full-time equivalent staff. That's to implement the selected program, address continued regulation compliance and annual state reporting requirements, and implement the recommendations from the affordability report. So the next city budget cycles will have these recommendations integrated into our planning efforts. So for next steps, edits and comments from Water Commission will be incorporated into the final plan, which will be a supporting document to the 2025 Urban Water Management Plan that's slated to go to City Council on June 16th. We will prioritize measures for implementation and track conservation measures identified in the plan to be aligned with the urban water use objectives, and ongoing monitoring and reporting will be conducted, including our quarterly performance measures, our annual reports to the State Water Board, 5-year updates to the Urban Water Management Plan, and 5-year updates to the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. And with that, we will take any other questions or comments.
Thank you very much for a very nice presentation. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Any public comment?
Chair Keller, we have no speakers for public comment on this item.
Okay, thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So up next, we have our water supply update.
Yeah. Last week.
Good morning, Water Commissioners. My name is Jasmine Showers, and I'm here today to present the water supply update. And as you notice, this is a fairly new picture. It's courtesy of a drone shot from COMB, and it's the point of view of the water kind of about to go over, spill over. This water supply update provides an overview for the first half of the water year. So that's October 1st from last year to the end of March. And as you know, every fall we plan for the next 3 water years. And during that planning analysis, we assume very dry or drought conditions. So the city can meet demands through water year 2028, even under those dry conditions. At the midpoint of the water year, which is also typically at the end of the rainy season, we record the actual supplies used, and then we see if we need to reassess any assumptions for the next 6 months. This section focuses on the rainfall and drought status, and it's been a water year of extremes. One of those extremes is that there's been a lot of rainfall locally. So you can see there for Gibraltar, Cachuma, and Santa Barbara have all had over 130% average rainfall. And this is the 50-year Gibraltar rainfall by water year graph. So it's from 1975 to 2026. And the blue bars show total annual rainfall. The orange is a 10-year running average, and then the black is a 50-year average. And if you look at the bottom right, you can see in 2025 we had a total of 14 inches, and then this year we have 37 inches. And then I think it's interesting also to see that the 10-year average and the 50-year average match right now. So we're back to average. At Gibraltar, November 2025 was the second wettest November since 1940, with over 9.5 inches of rain, and first place was 1966. And then in December 2025 was the second wettest December since 1940, and that's with over 15.65 inches of rain, and first place was in 2004 with 17.37. And this is showing the U.S. Drought Monitor, which looks at large-scale drought conditions statewide. So going into the water year, a lot of the southern part of the state was in some sort of dry conditions. That's with the yellow and the orange and the little patch of red. And then fast forward to the end of April, you can see it kind of flipped. So now the coastal parts of the state and Southern California do not have a dry condition. And then Northern California and the Sierras are in abnormally dry. And then there's a little bit of moderate drought in the northern part of the state. So that brings me to the other extreme of the water year. We had a very hot March. In Santa Barbara, we had a 6-degree above average March temperature. And then statewide, it was 3 to 9 degrees above average. And going into March, there was already below average snowpack. And then March caused a lot of snow melt. And as of April 1st, average statewide snowpack is at 18%. And this picture illustrates that lack of snowpack. This is from April 1st. And it's from the Department of Water Resources, or DWR, snow survey. And this is at Phillips Station, which is in Northern California. And it's the second lowest snow record compared to 2015. In 2015, there was 0 snow, so this just barely came in second. Looking forward to the next 3 months, this is a seasonal temperature outlook. And in the Central Coast is showing a 40 to 50% above normal chance to have higher than average temperatures. And that's generally true for most of the country. There's some sort of above normal chance to have above average temperatures. This is the Water Supply 2026 recap. In general, Cachuma Reservoir has been the most used supply at 52%. And this graph is showing the total water production for the first half of the water year. On the left is the planned production, and then on the right is the actual to date. And the total height of the bar corresponds to the total amount either planned or that we used. And then the different colors correspond to the supplies to make that up. So if you look at the actual bar, you can see visually that Cachuma makes up a little over half of that. And now I'll talk about each of the supplies briefly. This is the map showing the State Water Project central aqueducts, main lines. The DWR's current water year 2026 allocation is 45%. For the city, that means that our allocation for this year is 1,485 acre feet. And the city has not used State Water Project. And now we're gonna zoom down to San Luis Reservoir. And this is an interesting reservoir. It's shared between the state and federal United States Bureau of Reclamation. Starting in January, the city received 1,100 acre feet of carryover water. And so our total stored in the reservoir is 3,840 acre feet. And with our current allocation, the total available in San Luis is over 5,300 acre feet. And city staff is negotiating a sale right now through CCWA of about 2,500 acre feet. So you can see if that sale goes through, then our balance would go down there at the end.
Our goal right now is to store around 3,000 acre feet in San Luis. I think if we could line it up, we would prefer to store this additional water rather than sell it, but the market for storing water right now is just complicated. There's a lot of banks in infancy that are trying to get off the ground, but no one's really got a firm platform to kind of feel comfortable putting water in those banks. So right now, that's why we're leaning towards the sale of that water. We believe it'll generate over $1 million in sales to get rid of that. And this also sets us up if San Luis were to spill this next winter, we would have something, yeah. So.
Just curious, who's buying water right now?
I was just going to ask that. So we've signed up to participate in Central Coast Water Authority's surplus water transfer program. They do both a surplus water transfer program in wet years, and in dry years, they have a supplemental purchase program. And so it's how we can leverage our connection to the State Water Project with other state water contractors, where we can move that water through the system and sell it. We have not seen the detailed draft terms yet, but we're looking at selling some water to an agency related to Kern County Water Agency and some of their constituents.
Okay. Farmers.
Thank you.
Again, just make my mind think, looking at the Colorado River situation and the future, basically, of trying to settle that out. And I know that back in the day, previously, we had interest in switching our things for inland areas like Las Vegas and being able to transfer stuff. So interesting time to be in that market. Anyway, just a comment.
Very interesting. All right. Zooming down to Cachuma. The city and other Cachuma member units received 100% allocation. For the city, that means we have an 8,277 acre foot allocation. And as I mentioned, Cachuma has provided 52% of water year supplies to date. Cachuma did spill on New Year's Eve, and during that spill, the city lost over 12,000 acre feet of stored carryover water. The spill ended on March 20th. However, during spill conditions, any water that we use from Cachuma doesn't count against our allocation. And the city was able to utilize 955 acre feet of surplus water. So as of April 1st, we still have our full Cachuma allocation, and any unused water will become carryover in the next water year. So we expect to be able to build up that storage fairly quickly.
And of course, given Cachuma's capacity, we expect to receive another 8,000 acre feet starting October 1.
This is Gibraltar Reservoir, and this is another drone shot from COMB, now looking in at the reservoir. Gibraltar spilled on December 24th, and spill conditions ended in May. Gibraltar provided 19% of water year supplies to date. I'll show you the hydrograph. This is the Gibraltar hydrograph from 2000 to 2026. And the storage volume is in blue, and then you can see the total capacity in that yellow line. And the changes, which are usually going down, correspond to our bathymetric surveys. And you can also see the big drops in storage changes after fire events. The most current bathymetric survey is still from September 2024, and we expect to do a new one this summer. And then also we anticipate a maximum downstream release as per the Jen Chow agreement. So that's just over 600 acre feet. And Mission Tunnel, you can see on the map there in the blue dotted line, and that acts as a horizontal groundwater well. And Mission Tunnel provided 12% of water year supplies to date. Now, showing a simplified version of our groundwater map. So in green is the Foothill Basin, and then in blue is the Santa Barbara Basin. We have not had any groundwater pumping in water year 2026. There has been some important groundwater updates during this water year. The application for aquifer storage and recovery permit was accepted and approved, and we anticipate recharge starting early this summer. And also, as presented to Water Commission in October of last year, the 2024 USGS modeling update was completed, and that provided sustainable yield and basin storage data. And just as a reminder, the two basins have different sustainable yield goals and management goals. In Foothill, it's the amount we can pump while minimizing drawdown. And in Santa Barbara Basin, it's the amount we can pump while minimizing seawater intrusion. So we continue to monitor water levels in Foothill and seawater intrusion in Storage Unit 1. And there'll be more on that in the next section.
As mentioned in previous reports, we are gearing up staffing and financials to start sustainable groundwater pumping in fiscal year 2028.
And now the map is showing in gray is the water service area. And then in green, the green star is the location of the desal plant. And the solid line there is the inflow. And then the dotted line is the outflow. And desal provided 10% of water year supplies to date. With the Cachuma spill conditions, city staff took the opportunity to perform maintenance at the desal plant. The plant was turned off in February, and it's expected to come online at the beginning of next water year.
Excuse me, I think I ask this question every time. The conveyance line to convey desal up to Cater, the schedule on that to basically serve the entire area, plus or minus?
So the work is done. However, the pipeline experienced a rupture, and we are working with the contractor to make
Is that
sure.
the old line or the new line, the rupture?
The new one.
Ah.
The new one. So the old line, we went through that. That's a good question. We went through that, replaced all the valves, air vacs, and that project is complete. So as soon as we can figure out a permanent solution to the problem that occurred on the new line, we'll be able to put that back in service.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And finally, we have recycled water. So now the map is showing the purple star is the location of El Estero Water Resource Center. And then the purple lines are the main recycled water lines. Recycled water provided 6% of water supplies to date. And this is an important supply, especially in the summer when it helps offset potable water use at large landscapes. Recycled water was turned off while Cachuma was in surplus spill conditions. So it came back online in late March. Oh, it skipped ahead. Have the groundwater overview. So this is showing the more detailed groundwater map now. We have the storage unit areas. Oops. Sorry about that. The storage unit areas are in the dashed lines, and production wells are shown in the blue diamonds, and then the major groundwater monitoring wells are the white circles. In Foothill Basin, the city is not the only pumper. There's another major pumper in the basin, La Cumbra Mutual Water Company, and they're allowed to pump up to 300 acre-feet. And this orange dot here shows the location of their well. And current water levels in Foothill Basin are close to 2011. So this graph isn't very much different from the last water supply update. The squiggly lines correspond to the left-hand axis, and they show water surface elevations. And then the bars at the bottom are the groundwater pumping amounts, and they correspond to this right-hand axis. So if you kind of come over to the very right and you look at the recent levels and then draw a line over, you can see that they correspond to 2011, 2012 levels. So those are pre-drought levels. And this is zooming in on storage unit 1. So you can see the location here of El Estero in purple. And the management concern in storage unit 1 is monitoring for seawater intrusion. So we monitor for chloride concentrations. And I'll draw your attention to this monitoring well closest to El Estero, which is 23E5. This is showing chloride concentrations from 1986 to 2026 at this well. And for context, I have the local ocean chloride amount at the top there. And you can see that there still is not evidence of seawater intrusion at this well. It's very low. The most current reading is 140 milligrams per liter.
Again, just observation. It's really interesting that the 89 to 91 drought, right? Obviously, we were pumping pretty good and it was starting to turn. But we went through this other drought, which was even worse. And it managed better in that regard. That's an interesting, just observation-wise, curious.
Yes.
I think part of that was we have been slowly moving our wells more inland, which I think played a part in that. That's my
Yeah.
hypothesis on
Let
that.
me see if I can. Yeah, you can kind of see here the white wells and then Alameda well, high school wells. So they're, moving more inland there. This is the water supply summary outlook. So the city can still meet demands for the next 3 water years, even when assuming dry conditions. For the remainder of water year 2026, we plan to continue to use surface water and recycled water. We do not plan to pump groundwater until water year 2028. We do not plan to use state water project water. And then the desal plant is offline until October of 2026. So visually, you can see this graph is showing water supplies to meet demand from 2016 to 2028. The first 10 years are actual numbers, and then the last 3 bars show the projected amounts. And again, the total bar, the total height of the bar corresponds to the amount of water we either used or plan to use. And then the different colors correspond to the different supplies to make that up. If you look at water year 2026, you can see that the majority of supplies are surface water from Gibraltar and Cachuma, and then there's a little bit of desal from the beginning of the year. Water year 2027 has full desal added back in, And then water year 2028 also has full desal, and then you can see that sustainable yield at the top in yellow. And that's about 900 acre feet per year, 600 coming from storage unit 1, and 300 coming from Foothill. And with that, I am at the recommendation portion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Questions?
I just had one clarifying question. So is council getting a presentation or just the report?
Right now, it's just on consent.
Okay. I would just recommend then that you add a chart into the report, like either the kind of water supply plan or the one that you just had, like something just to visualize that breakdown, I think would be really helpful because it's all written in text, but a simple graphic would go a long way.
I agree.
Any public comment?
Chair Keller, we have no speakers for public comment on this item.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Showers. Very colorful presentation. Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Great.
Do you have?
We do have a vote.
Oh, we have a recommendation. We
yeah.
have a
We have a
vote. Yes, sorry about
recommendation
that. So
that,
we need a motion
We
to approve.
receive the update and recommend council, send it on, make a motion, send it on to council.
With a graph. Second.
Okay,
Do you want the with a graph in the motion?
Sure.
Yeah, add that to the motion. We both agree.
Okay, hang on. With graphic. Okay.
good.
All right, so roll call vote. Commissioner Snyder,
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis,
Yes.
Chair Keller.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries.
Could we get a copy of the PowerPoint sent to us?
I'm gonna let Ms.
Yeah.
Showers answer that.
Yes, that is my goal. I have to work with some of the other departments in the city to publish it
Okay.
publicly, but I would like to do that.
Yeah, no, it's very informative.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, we're trying to go with these story maps are really great, but it's kind of, we'd love to be able to, after we do these, at least for the next 6 months, have this be something on our website that folks
Yeah.
can go to, and then as we update them.
That'd be great.
I know, I'm just trying to figure out how to turn them around and make it publicly available.
Great, thank you. So I guess we've covered a lot of the director's report, but do we have anything else in terms of your comments? I mean, she already covered
Yeah.
the water supply, so we've got a lot of that, but.
We do, and I do want to go into a little updates on quite a few little things here. So first of all, just want to touch budget. Wastewater, we're doing pretty good, within 1% of where we thought we would end. However, water, as we've been talking about, is about 6% below where we thought we'd be. It's about $4.5 million. So as we get into next year and start working on the budget, this is going to be kind of a big change. One of the things that we've done with this coming year's budget, just a last minute change, is we basically dropped down expected revenues and said they were going to remain flat from what we thought this year. So give us basically, we're going to have done 2 10% rate increases, and basically we're saying one of them didn't happen. Is basically what is happening to our revenues. So just think of how when we go through that, how we're going to message some of that, despite some of these increases, it just, the water usage just is not manifested, and therefore the revenue has not come with it. So we're definitely creating some challenges for us. Any questions on revenues? Okay. Well, let's start off with desal. So, as you may recall, we are doing some pretty significant modifications to the plant and quite a bit of maintenance, which is great. So we're really leveraging this time. There's a long list of improvements that are underway, and with the goal of having the plant back online in October. I will caveat it that there is nothing has left the plant that would make it incapable of returning to service should we find ourselves in an emergency. However, there are a lot of modifications being made that will increase its nameplate capacity. So they talk about it. It's like instantaneous capacity. However, our goal is actually to achieve the 3,125 acre feet a year that we are looking for out of this supply. We're not looking to expand its capacity, but what we have learned from the last 8 years is that There are times of the year when it is capable of producing more water and times of the year when it is not. And so basically we're trying to take advantage of those times of the year when water quality is better and it can produce more water. At the end of the year, we're looking for that stable 3,125. For us, it's less important day to day as it is annually with our water supply planning. They are doing, during this time, we're trying to do some pilot testing. So we're testing some different tweaks to the treatment process, mainly related to pretreatment. So this is removing basically everything ahead of the RO. So at this point, we're not turning on the RO system, but it's running the pretreatment system and trying different types of filters. We're trying a ceramic filter, and we're trying a new product called AFM. It's basically like a crushed glass to you, and seeing how that performs as it relates to different variations in seawater quality. We did have, let's see, 2 weeks ago, we had a leak show up on the intake line in the plant. We believe we've figured out where it's coming from. Unfortunately, it's pretty deep. And so they've been spending a lot of time. A lot of it's now gotten to hand digging because there's so many other pipes in the area. Hoping in the next week we'll get to the bottom of that leak. It seems like it's leaking at a T. Fortunately, it's not critical to us at this point. Cater, we awarded on Tuesday, $50 million contract for the improvements there. Really exciting. And just giving you all a head up, we will be holding a public meeting with the neighbors on June 17th. Contractor will be there, just wanting to talk about noise, lighting, which seem to be sensitivities to those issues, and just talking through our strategy for that project. This is National Infrastructure Week. Council recognized that on Tuesday, and for both Public Works and now the Water Resources Department, that's a big deal. We are, for those things that are going on behind the scenes that no one sees, and today we'll be celebrating our staff with a barbecue. Interesting turn of events. So on May 12th, Council approved staff to enter into negotiations with the Montecito Sanitary District. At this point, nothing, their board approved it as well, but they haven't reached out at this point, so nothing has happened. However, it has gained the attention of the regional board, who is very interested in this and very excited to see Summerland and Montecito's outfalls go away. So they would really like to see the city be the treatment for both of those communities. And so there's a lot of momentum there. So we're going to be meeting with the regional board to kind of hear what their thoughts are on this as well. Lucinda and Maryland Way, are you familiar with that? It's above Foothill. Needless to say, we've had numerous breaks in that area. The main had been replaced as of December, but we've been working with Caltrans because both of those streets kind of end up on the Foothill 192, and lots of back and forth with our contractor and Caltrans, but I am pleased to say that we'll be wrapping up those connections this week into early next week and finally get those property owners on a new main and hopefully just finally put to rest all the disruptions to water service up there. Another big effort we're undertaking, Commissioner Davis may recognize this, community development has a large number of paper files on site that take up a large footprint in the building. And so to help expedite that, given the general fund's financial woes, Water Resources is going to be paying for 4 interns to work and help scan all those documents and get them out of here so that we can acquire that space for staffing needs. So we're kind of excited for that. So I'm putting that out there because we just noticed the flyer, and certainly we're looking for...
Internal building or the external?
We're starting with the internal. Good question. That's a really good question. So I'm saying that because we're going to be advertising at Santa Barbara City College and UCSB. pays 28 an hour. It's pretty good. So really hoping we can attract folks. And with any of these opportunities, obviously this is going to be a grindy task of scanning documents, but we are hoping that while they're here, we can introduce them to other aspects and maybe a career in city government. So hopefully connecting them with water operators, city planners, and so hopefully it'll have multiple layers to it other than just scanning.
Joshua, do they still use Laurel Reservoir as not Laurel Reservoir, but the
Yes, they
tank
do.
up there?
Yes, they do.
They still do that?
Yes, they do.
There's a old reservoir tank up at McKenzie Park, and they turned that into a record storage facility. Yeah.
Moisture is a problem.
Oh, geez.
It is. Yes. I feel like it's on the way to shredders, but
Yeah, right.
anyway, I think we're getting better. There is now protocols. Anything new coming in is getting scanned. We're no longer holding on to paper files like that, but trying to get through that backlog, the funding to get through. We had approached an outside vendor. It was like $500,000 to scan that, and we think with interns we can do it for probably $150,000. So pretty significant cost savings there. Let's see, anything with that? I guess I'm happy to answer any other questions if you had any.
Question?
Okay.
No, only question. June meeting?
June meeting, thank you. At this point, we don't have any items for June, so Commission's good with that. We're going to cancel June, and we'll return in July. And then we'll have our normal work session in August. So that's the plan. Yeah. Any public comment, I guess? Right?
Yeah. Do we have any public comments?
Chair Keller, we have no speakers for public comment on this item.